Okay. Hi, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Meghan Cook. I'm from the Center for Technology and Government at the University at Albany, and I'm joined by my colleague Derek Werthmuller, who's the Director of Technology, and Meghan Sutherland, who's our Program Assistant. Today I'm going to talk to you about a lot of things, cover 3 topics, one of them being the grant, and I'm going to go over them not quickly, but I don't want us to be here all night. I know you have other things to talk about. So, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we're good.
Yes, great.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Since I don't. So, Center for Technology and Government, I'm assuming I don't need to tell you who we are, but we're an applied research center, and we focus on the workings of government. We work with governments all over the world to help them understand their IT and their information challenges so they can be better consumers of technology. All right, so our presentation tonight, I'm going to talk quickly about how we got here to this grant. I'm going to talk a little bit about a project we did with the City of Schenectady, and then talk about the grant. So, quick recap. Informal information sharing around code enforcement has been going on for 2 years or more at CTG. Started with the City of Albany bringing together a group of people, and before we knew it, once a month on Friday mornings, police, fire, code enforcement from Troy, Albany, Schenectady, and Amsterdam were meeting to do ad hoc information sharing. Through that process at CTG, through that process, we decided we would apply for a consolidated funding application. Collectively, the group applied for 2, and both were not funded. Reviews came back saying, absolutely, this project has to happen, we want to share information, but there's no bucket of money. After that time, we sat together, we said, what are we going to do? We went and made a presentation to the Secretary of State, who then said, I get this problem, I understand it, but what you didn't do was you didn't tell me how much it costs. How much are you spending on blighted and vacant properties? So after that, we went back in Schenectady and Amsterdam and tried to figure out how much is being spent. Tabulated those numbers, went back to the Secretary of State and said, this is a big problem. He pointed us to the local government efficiency grant, where we then collectively applied for the grant as City of Schenectady is the lead, and was then awarded. So I just gave you 2 years in the making. Okay?
One sentence.
All right. See, we are going fast.
You done good.
So in the middle of that, Mayor McCarthy said, if we got this grant, would the City of Schenectady be able to jump in right away? And we said, well, maybe not. We need to know a little bit more about what's going on in the City of Schenectady's code enforcement environment. So this picture represents really what we did in the project. It was 13 weeks. It was a quick look. It doesn't cover everything, but we went out and we were trying to find out information needs. Knowing that no system or grant can ever give everybody the information they need, we wanted to ask anyway to find out. And then we looked at information realities. We spent time in all the systems. We spent time talking to all the staff. We mapped some business processes that the code enforcement officers are using just to understand what both environments are looking like. And so you see, we had workshops at CTG, which is located on Wolf Road in Albany. And overall, we were able to come up with some very high-level findings and some deep findings in information needs, high-level findings in other areas to help inform the grant. This is a busy slide. Essentially, this is what it means. You want to do data analysis. You want to inform policy. Governments all over the world want to do this. But in order to do that, you have to back up. You have to make sure you have the solid, basic building blocks in data collection, in IT investment, and in governance. And so if you don't collect the data in the same way from city to city, how are you going to share it? If you collect the data in a narrative field and there's no way to run a query on it, then how are you going to use that information? How are you going to pull it and do analysis? So one of the things we work very hard at CTG is work across programmatic areas. So we think about data, we think about information, we think about processes in a standalone way. So it could be health and human services, public safety, code enforcement. It could be many programmatic areas of government. And really, this happens everywhere in every area of government in every city. Schenectady is not any different because you want to increase your capability and your capacity to share code enforcement related information. That makes sense? You want to do these things, but you got to back it up. It's almost like going down a rabbit hole all the way to the data, to the information and how it's collected, how it's defined, what format it's in. It's having an agile infrastructure, which means, are you able to do the things in your code enforcement department that you want to do? Does your system allow you to do that? This city has tremendous code enforcement programs, but not all of them are being done through the system that is currently in place. Tools were made. You have Eric Schilling is one of the most progressive code enforcement people there is, not only in the capital region. I talk about some of the programs that Schenectady is doing with people who are working at a national level, and it is extremely progressive. What we want to do is help him get the data, information, and systems in place to support those, because he's already doing great things. So here are some of the questions we ask people. And if you saw the list, we asked community groups, we asked zoning, we asked planning, we asked 911 dispatch, we asked everybody these questions. I'm giving you some high-level findings. There is a report that you can have. Code enforcement operations is extremely high-performing. They're doing 700 plus tickets, almost 7,000 permits, and 100 licenses. But we wanted to learn about how hard it is to get that work done. This code enforcement department serves as an information center. And again, this is not unlike many cities who are understanding how important this information is to their other departments. So, calls per week from 911 dispatch. Social services, planning, engineering, OGS. So when you think about the people who are going out to do the work, they're also serving as an information center. Okay? So when you think about building the capability in the code enforcement program and sharing information, what you want to do is some of the things cut down on the amount of calls that come into the department. Allow it so people can go in and look at the information themselves. It doesn't mean that it's going to go away right away. People like to call and talk to somebody. What do you think? There's a lot of institutional knowledge, but there is some information that could be shared. Code enforcement department is a client center. This is one of my favorites. They were able to boil down that a license has about 6 interactions. Okay? So you need to have many interactions in order for it to get to complete. 85% of the people do not print it online, they come in. A lot of that's because they have questions. There's institutional knowledge with the code enforcement people. You may never be able to change that, but we wanted to show how, in addition to all the programs that they're enacting, they're serving as an information center, as a client center, and they're carrying out all of the other responsibilities of the code enforcement department. So when we asked all the groups, what is the most important information? What data do you want as it relates to code enforcement? This is what came up. Owner information, property address, permits issued, history of violations, and status of violations. Police and fire had their own list of nice to have and must have. Zoning had their own, but across all, this is what came up. Owner information isn't as easy as it sounds. Every department has to collect it on their own cycle. 911 dispatch has a tremendous database of owner information, not just here, but everywhere. So it's figuring out how to get the most up-to-date information.
I'm sorry, but what is SBL on that slide?
Section block and lot.
Section block.
Yes.
I don't get my tax bill.
Right.
I do.
So
Escrow.
I'll just go on project now, jump back. So here we are, May 2015. City of Schenectady awarded the grant in the lead of 4 cities. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the vision and the goals of that project are, because you never meet all of the needs of everyone in every piece of information, but you try to do the best you can in order to share. At the very beginning, about 2 years ago, I spent a tremendous amount of time talking to people all across the United States about Blight. There's an organization called the Center for Community Progress. They do amazing things all over the place. But one of the things people said to me was that 2 things you're doing in your area I haven't heard about before. Number 1, you're making it regional. Cities do a lot internally to share information within their city, but to go across cities, that's somewhat new. There is a project in Cleveland, but they did it more at the community level. So that is new and different and revolutionary. The second one is you're focusing on building capability within cities who don't already have the necessary components in place. Now, if you look at the 4 cities, Schenectady and Troy use different systems, but are using systems. Amsterdam and Gloversville are using less sophisticated systems that collect only a portion of the information. So the grant, can you go to the next one and then I'll come back? Can you just go? Yeah, go back. So the grant has 4 goals. Number 1, determine what the needs are in each of the cities. If you like your system and you have everything that you need, then we're going to focus on sharing between the cities. But if you don't, what are the things that you need to do? And with Schenectady, we already have a deep dive look, but we have to do that with the other cities. Develop the technical and policy foundation of a shared platform. So if you're going to share information across the capital region and potentially the state, then you need to get together and talk about definitions. I've been in the room with 4 cities, police and fire, as we talk about what a vacant or unoccupied building is. I've been in there when there's disagreements. This is not a standardization, but rather bringing people together saying, if you want to share information, we're going to have to come to some sort of an alignment. Not across the whole state, but a couple of definitions that people can agree on. So that's developing this foundation of the shared platform. Encourage increased uniformity in process and definition. 2 of the cities right now I know are very much looking forward to spending more time with Schenectady's code enforcement department. And Eric has already been to Amsterdam and Gloversville because they want to adopt some of the processes that are already working here. And the last goal is very important to the Department of State. Establish a culture and community of knowledge sharing and with other cities in the future. That's one of the reasons they talk about why they funded this. Because urban blight is affecting cities all over New York State, and they want a groundswell. They want the communities to come together and figure out how they're going to share and how they're going to adopt each other's practices, what works, what doesn't. And this is one way to begin to do that. Can you go back? Sorry. No So here's something that I want to make sure that we just cover. There are uniform codes in New York State. Everyone has to abide by them. But the definitions and the electronic formats by which they are captured is left up to each locality. And that's not any different than social services, state supervised, locally administered programs. But if you want to bump it up to a regional level, you have to come to some sort of alignment. So there's lack of easily accessible code enforcement related data within cities. There's many cities, bigger ones across the United States that have public portals. You can go in and you can see the information. I know we've all looked at Chicago, New Orleans. Those are great, but those are large cities, many resources, have all the systems in place, and they're sharing information within one city. So what can we do in this region to build accessibility a little bit more within the departments and across the region? And no formal mechanism for information sharing. As much as we looked to say, how are code enforcement officers getting together? How are they sharing this information? We couldn't find it. So if we can play a role in helping that, I mean, the first meeting where they met each other in the capital region was great. They had a short list of people who were causing problems in all the cities, and they were already starting to problem solve. Well, this picture is not the greatest one, but it gives you an idea of what we're trying to do. Because the goal isn't just to have the shared information resource across the region. It's for each city to start sharing information more easily across corporation council, real property, building and codes. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about roles in this project. The City of Schenectady is the lead. They have experience and expertise. But as David will talk about at the end, all the contracting is coming through the city as the lead grantee of the award. CTG, we have experience in this, not only from project management, but IT specialization, public sector information sharing, bringing communities together, and essentially, when it gets hard, when you have everybody in the room and no one's agreeing, trying to figure out some common ground. The cities are all experts in their area. So they're going to come to the table and say, these are the things that we need. This is how Gloversville is different. This is how Troy is different. Troy is using a program that they love, but it does certain things that they need more help on. So they're very open about that. Whereas Amsterdam is looking for many different areas of the code enforcement program. And having this funded by the Department of State is the best thing that could have happened. And here's why. Because they can leverage a statewide reach. Since this has been announced, I've been contacted by national organizations, law schools, other cities. People want to know how they become a part of this. Some want to do the information sharing. Some say, are you going to get a group of people and start talking about definitions? We want to know what you're doing. The great work all the land banks have done, figuring out how to tie into that. I will say that the first year is just focusing on the cities. You got to do some work at home before you think about regional sharing. So I know you can't read the timeline, but we thought we'd put it up there. There's many different activities. There's lots of work to be done starting over the summer. And so deliverables. What are you going to see from this project? There's many activity reports that we have to produce. There's high-level process maps of each of the cities. There's a requirements document that will go out to procure either enhancements for cities or a system for a city and the sharing platform. There's a governance and oversight model. One of the things the Department of State has said to us was, we want to know how this is going to be sustainable in the future. So what would governance look like? When CTG works on these projects, we're not in the business of running production systems. We're in the business of helping governments figure out, procure the technology, and getting them going for a couple of years, and then it's governed itself. And then statewide recommendations. What can people come together on? What can't they? What programs were shared? What's context specific?